My friends, it's time for another NHCC alumni coffee break. And I am thrilled. Dr. Ethan Capers, he's a doctor of physical therapy, and he's returned today to do another check-in. Now, Ethan, you and we talked back in May. So I got to ask, man, the pandemic's still raging, and you're a doctor and doing a lot of stuff. How's things been?
It's been wild, Troy. It's been a wild couple of months. There's been a lot of things that have happened. My clinic closed for a short time towards the beginning in an effort to be a part of flattening the curve. We were closed for just under a month and then opened back up because a lot of our services, the types of things that we do in industrial rehab and outpatient orthopedics, are very helpful to keep people from having to present to the hospital with other conditions, which reduces some of the load on the centers that are really trying to deal with COVID stuff. So it's been a very eventful time. My clinic's in St. Paul. There was some rioting that was not too far away from us. Having lived through the riots in Los Angeles in the early 90s, I definitely see a lot of the parallels as a person of color. This has been an emotional roller coaster ride for sure. And I'm really, really hoping that some of what's taking place helps push us in a more positive direction. So, but yeah, it's definitely been wild. I was grateful for the time with my kids at home.
Okay, so we've got about 500 folks on the NHCC alumni Facebook page. So you mentioned your kids, and I've got a son as well, but you got to do a shout out for your kids.
All right, yeah, I'll give a shout out. My two at home, Hunter and Scarlett. Hunter actually broke his arm a couple weeks ago. He had to have orthopedic surgery, and he's doing real well. So shout out to my little boy. At home, my two older ones up and out of the house, Kenjan and Alan. Alan's married and living on his own and doing the whole man thing. So my spread goes from age 30, just over 30, to now 10. And my little girl is my youngest, and she's just been an amazing bright spot at home throughout everything. She's out on the trampoline every day. She's doing like flips and super bouncy, sparkly unicorn stuff, which I'm sure she'll be thrilled to hear me say.
Oh, wow. My admin would love that, Ethan. She's a unicorn aficionado. So
awesome.
That's super fun. Well, Scarlett and Hunter, your dad is a super cool guy, and man, it's always fun talking to you, Ethan. I really love it.
Thank you, Troy. I appreciate that.
Very nice shout out there. So I gotta tell you, last time you and I talked, and we had a pretty great conversation, and you threw a little teaser out there about a time
yes.
you convinced Dr. John O'Brien, former NHCC president, to do something that maybe was a little out of the realm for him.
It was off the beaten path, we'll say. I'll try to tell the story as quickly as possible because there's a lot of moving parts. I was in the honors program, and I was supposed to do an honors capstone class, and I was going to do this one that was going to be about Caldecott award-winning books, which I thought great because I can read them to my kids while I do my studies. It'll be great, be wonderful. And then I was told that the class was canceled because that particular faculty member was going on sabbatical. And they said, well, we're going to go ask Dr. O'Brien to see if he can put on a class. So about a week before that, there had been a conversation regarding actually gun control in Bruce Liebes's ethics class. And Dr. O'Brien came out to speak and kind of present this question to us as ethicists towards the end of the semester. And I happened to be wearing a t-shirt from Zombieland, which had, rule number 2, the double tap and like a splatter across it. And of course, I'm a centrist in terms of my political views, but I prefer to have discussions based on fact. And so I was bringing up a lot of Department of Justice statistics and stuff like that as this whole thing rang out. But I am in support of that Second Amendment rights. So I was also speaking to that, And then he made a comment about my shirt, and I wanted him to, oh gosh, now he thinks I'm this crazy gun nut. So I walked up and I was like, hey, this shirt is actually just from a movie. And he's like, oh yeah, no, I love that movie. I totally like play Left 4 Dead with my teenage son. And so we got into this conversation. We ended up having coffee together a couple hours. So a week later, they tell me they're going to go ask him to teach this class. And I said, tell him I said he should do it on zombies. And she looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, no, and tell him I said so. So I definitely looked crazy. And Friday, I got the greatest email I have ever received to date, which started out, and I'm going to paraphrase here because I'm just doing it from memory, but it said something along the lines of, it may be that I'd had too much coffee today, but I have agreed to teach a class on the zombie apocalypse. In retrospect, I probably should have chosen Star Trek, on which I'm something of an intergalactic expert, but what the heck, it's just zombies. If everything goes horribly wrong, I'm holding you responsible. And so it started from there. It was an absolutely brilliant class. We went over a ton of stuff looking at the appearance of zombies throughout recent history, looking at cultural artifact, examining the actual historical origins of it, but also like how and when we see spikes in the making of stories along these lines, and sort of what cultural iconography and events are kind of taking place around there. So what we know is that there's some really horrible beginnings having to do with taking advantage of the voodoo tradition of like where zombies come from, the zombie powder that comes from voodoo traditions in Haiti. But it was actually being used by like the Americans and Europeans who were controlling that area, essentially keeping people in slavery well after slavery had been declared, illegal in the United States, and basically threatening to take away their afterlife in order to keep them working. So like that was a big thing when it started, but then when we see like the arc of how it basically reappeared into society with Cesar Romero, the George Romero films, and and the existence of things like Night of the Living Dead, which very much has a lots of iconography regarding the civil rights movement, and really about kind of following like what it means to be a follower of the civil rights movement and that mob mentality. Like all those things are really like big themes in how that goes, and we see spikes in the making of those films during the AIDS epidemic, during wartime, and by the way, that switch to science-based instead of mysticism-based zombies really is something that happened as a result of the AIDS epidemic, where of course there were people thinking talking about conspiracies that this was made in a lab and it all that kind of stuff. And so the ultimate question of the course is basically like this idea that you can learn a lot from a culture, about a culture, by how it chooses to scare itself, because that really is sort of a cathartic mechanism. It's one of the reasons that I think horror entertainment is so popular, that people kind of go and scare themselves in a situation in which they can feel safe, and it really, I think, helps people process through their feelings of fear and anxiety about a lot of other issues. And from a nervous system standpoint, we've got that stress is the sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight, kicking up to a low degree, and having it go up to a high degree kicks in our body's mechanism for calming down and getting back below there. And so in many ways, I think people who enjoy the thrill of going to horror movies, or going to theme parks and riding on roller coasters for that matter, or any other behavior that is that presents some sense of risk and failure, all of those behaviors serve to help bring us down to calmer states. And so from a physiologic standpoint, it just makes sense. But I really found the course fascinating. Dr. O'Brien talked with me prior to doing a TED Talks, in fact, on it. And I assisted him in preparing for it. It's brilliant. It's out there. I think it's a really neat concept. And considering how quickly he had to throw it together, hands down, it's was probably my favorite course, and I consider it a feather in my academic cap that I get to say I'm a zombie scholar.
Absolutely. And what a great story. And also, we get a little history, we get a little psychology, a little philosophy. And I love all the tie-in stuff, Ethan. That's marvelous how it all ties back to kind of what we're facing even now and how we physiologically respond to things.
Absolutely. And I would not be surprised if in the next couple of years we see some uptick in the production of movies along this line, given how prevalent the image of these huge crowds are. You know, I really think that there is some fundamental primal fear about large groups of out of control people that reach everybody in different ways. And, you know, we see more and less productive ways of reacting to some of these images in social media over the last few weeks. You know, there's some people who are trying to be understanding and some people who are very not understanding, some people who want to try to enforce their own sense of order upon things, and their sense of order is offended by the way things have gone down. And I'm not making a judgment one way or the other, but it's interesting to look at how different people are responding to the realities of these images being, in our backyard.
So true. Dr. Ethan Capers, always a pleasure. We'll definitely be checking in again here soon. And my thanks to you today.
Thank you, Troy. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
And please always join us, alumni, for the NHCC Alumni Coffee Break. That's every Tuesday. Until then, it's Troy the Alumni Guy signing off. I wish I had my cup, Ethan. I don't, but we'll do the figurative cheer.
I saved this much. I saved this much for today. So this is kind of, at this point, it's almost iced coffee. But take care, Troy.
Thank you, sir.